But the beautiful thing about dealing with your feelings is that when you loosen your craving and you soften your hatred, and these are extremes, which can be brought down to away from each extreme wall to liking and disliking. Just soften, and this is where bias comes from. And bias taken to extremes becomes prejudice, becomes racist, becomes war, becomes killing, becomes uh, soka pari dewa dukkha domanasam. Soka pari dewa dukkha domanasu payasa. Sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair in the Pali language. All the darkness, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair, all of these things on the scale, and we could think of it as the alchemical scale of acidic and basic, coming to water. This is why water is such an incredible symbol on so many different levels. We're trying to be water. The Noble Eightfold Path of the Buddha is a moral path. It is the path of the middle way, not because right is right and wrong is wrong, but because you want to just stabilize right in the middle so that you can see things clearly. Getting hooked into one edge of duality or the other, we want to walk a razor line, and this is where these teachings of tranquility come into focus. Now we have to talk about Kundalini and the golden flower, and this primordial science of awakening, of enlightenment, of rapture, of what the saints experienced, what the Egyptians experienced, what the Buddhist monks experienced, what many still experience today, what there isn't a language for to describe and never has been, which is why it gets brushed off as esotericism or fanaticalism or fancies of grandeur and imagination.
Flights of fancy and delusions of grandeur.
Because we have a paradigm that filters that it's a sieve for shooting this stuff off there, and someone designed that sieve, as Carl Sagan warns us in an old interview of his.
One is what I just talked about, that we've arranged a society based on science and technology in which nobody understands anything about science and technology, and this combustible mixture of ignorance and power, sooner or later, is going to blow up in our faces. I mean, who is running the science and technology in a democracy if the people don't know anything about it? And the second reason that I'm worried about this is that science is more than a body of knowledge. It's a way of thinking, a way of skeptically interrogating the universe with a fine understanding of human fallibility. If we are not able to ask skeptical questions, to interrogate those who tell us that something is true, to be skeptical of those in authority, then we're up for grabs for the next charlatan, political or religious, who comes ambling along. It's a thing that Jefferson laid great stress on. It wasn't enough, he said, to enshrine some rights in a constitution or a Bill of Rights. The people had to be educated, and they had to practice their skepticism and their education. Otherwise, we don't run the government. The government runs us.
You're not a scientist. You don't understand what it is, but somebody does, and they have told you what it is, but they didn't. The scientist didn't. The scientist just works as a scientist. Scientist offers up their knowledge because that's in human nature to do. It's the people who are dictating the there's a term for that, and I forget the word. The story, and you have to know that story for yourself. Kundalini, awakening, alchemy. What is going on? The deeper you dig into these ancient teachings, the more you're going to understand these people were aware of brain anatomy. They were aware of the limbic system. They knew every part, piece, and function of it. But they knew it on an emotional level too. They depicted it in their most esoteric and symbolic of art, images of the brain stem as goddesses, as gods, as structures. This is them saying, we know it, we know what's in here, we know how it all works. But seeing pictures of it and seeing art of it isn't the same as the actual instruction for what is going on. We do know in our modern science what's going on. Chemicals are being released, flowing through and affecting us. They are what physiologically causes our emotion, which causes sensation down the spinal column, in our nerves, through our cerebrospinal fluid. There are chemicals for anger, chemicals for sadness and joy, and all these things. So in every lineage, they speak of this stabilization, this balance of chemicals. Literally in alchemy, they took it all the way to focusing on that as the symbolic. It's part symbolic and it's part like physical, actual scientific truth, is that in the Buddha's, Eightfold Noble Path is this way of living our lives so that our inner chemistry is never unbalanced. We're literally developing a chemical elixir inside of the limbic system. It's DMT. It's DMT being released from the pineal gland. But you cannot just go out and get some DMT and just make it dump your brain with drugs. You can do that, and it's gonna blow your socks off. It's gonna be amazing. It's gonna teach you a lot of things. But what we want to do is to coax that thing, to inside that limbic brain where your pineal gland is. You have your pituitary sitting down in this awesome little armored shrine of your skull. It's like the only part of your brain that has its own skull. It's like inside of your skull, and it's just hanging off your brain like testicles, like very strange and completely encapsulated, because it is the activating gland for all your other glands. It's a very important part of our hardware. And then, the brain on the backside of it is your pineal. So we want to take that and we want to pet it and we want to brush it, just like Puss in Boots in the fourth Shrek, who's a pretty kitty, I am.
Now who's a pretty kitty? I am.
We want to do that to ourselves. We want to soothe ourselves. We want to never be afraid of death, of war, of the end of our lives, of losing our loved ones, of being cheated on or betrayed or losing our job. And they know that, which is why you have a job, which is why you get married, which is why there's all these complications in our lives, and we're cranked on with our emotions in this culture. And this is why, because if you're going to stabilize these things and soothe the pineal gland to the point where it naturally releases the DMT inside of it, it's going to be a completely different experience than some psychedelic, like, dude, I was like tripping, man. You're not hallucinating. When you can coax this in, and you can on week-long or 10-day-long meditation retreats. I have done it, and I have had some profound experiences, and I was not hallucinating, not really. My visual cortex was definitely lit up, and my visceral experience was totally intense. The Buddha gives very explicit instructions about these things to let go of the pleasure. As the pleasure's rising, as more and more endorphins are being released in the limbic system, when you, vinaya lokaya bija dhammanasam, let go of worldly covetousness and grief, this is our duality, when you let go of both of these systematically and consistently, joy naturally arises. Pleasure naturally just starts. There's nothing wrong, so the brain just starts to light up. And then there's inspiration. These are the 7 factors of enlightenment, the Sattva-bojjhangas, which start with mindfulness as the oversight. And then there's 3 that parallel each other going on. These factors, ways of experience. And one of them is investigation, which causes inspiration. playing with our faculties of awareness, this natural investigation into things, which the body raises energy because you're in active mode. You're inactive but in subconscious mode because you are subdued. We're in a non-reactive state. That's a subconscious state. We're polarizing between the two hemispheres of our brain, conscious to subconscious, by not having feelings. Yes, we're becoming the Borg. We're becoming robots, and we're going to end up killing everybody, and especially the Christians, because we're evil. No, we're not talking about not ever feeling ever again. We're talking about having a tolerance for feeling and staying noble and dignified before God, you might say, sort of speak. We're talking about a holistic earnestness, a grace with our human experience, and a maturity to have these feelings and not act upon them, to let them pass through our perceptions and not be riled. I think that any God would be very proud of us if we were able to actually metabolize the experience that he gave us here on this world, which is what these teachings are trying to influence us to do, is to metabolize this experience, to be with our experience without vinaya loke abhija domanasam, going into covetousness or going into grief, lamenting what's going on or delighting in it. Buddha speaks, there's an entire sutta where all the suttas, at the end of them, the monks, they delight in what he's taught them. They relish it. They relish the wisdom of it. But then the Buddha gives a talk about relishing and delighting in things. And he says, monks, when you delight in something, it kills everything. It kills that plant you're trying to grow inside yourself. It destroys the inner chemistry of your limbic system. It screws everything up. The minute you delight in something, there's craving, there's wanting. There's craving and wanting. There's something that can be lost. And hatred is born because you will defend that thing that you now love. So don't delight. And at the end of that sutta, it says, and the monks did not delight in what the Buddha said that day. And it's the only one in the whole canon, and the rest, almost all of them, it ends very much like that. They end similarly because it was not written down for hundreds, if not 1,000 years, at least 300 to 500 years, maybe 800, I'm not sure. It was memorized it was an oral tradition from teacher to student. And if you've ever been to a Buddhist monastery, you sit there chanting, you chant in Pali and you chant in English to get this stuff into your memory, and it works. All the ancient cultures did this, and it works. So the elixir of the gods, what is it called? It's called Amrita. In Hinduism, this golden elixir that the gods are all trying to get through polarity, through this poling of polarity, this is the symbol. And the post is your spinal column, your brain stem, that column and the two serpents of good and evil. It's liking and disliking. This is the chemical work that we're doing inside this.